this for sure. Okay, we're gonna record. Okay. This sounds like a weird one, I know, but like talking about timelines and how to create motivation or how to explain the process and to get people through it quicker. Okay. And so let's start on the buying process. So when someone calls you and says, yeah, we're thinking about buying a home and selling in the spring. We've said this before. First question out of your mouth needs to be, tell me more about that. Why the spring? And they may very well respond with, well, my husband's a CPA, and so his busy season will be over. And if we were to list the property in April or May, like in May, that he'd be through busy season and give us a little bit more time. That's like maybe a valid reason, right? Say, okay, our time is short right now. But a lot of times people may very well reply with like, well, we're going to start, but that's where you've got the biggest market buyers to buy and we're going to get the most for our house. Again, it is your job as an agent to educate them on the pros and cons of waiting until May to get their house ready to list. And we'll go into a little bit more of that recasting and that contingency. Let's explain your options and what that looks like. And to also talk to them and go through kind of a timeline of, so we're talking about buying your home before you sell, and then what does that mean? And we go through those options. Right? But a lot of times people don't remember, even if they bought a home, it might have been 3 to 7 years ago, how long it takes to get even through that buying process. And then if we add and stack on top of that, that we're going to sell a property, that takes some more time into consideration, or that we're going to ask for a longer closing. So a lot of times, and we've said this before, when they say, I want to buy a home in the spring, tell me more. And then clarify for me, do you want keys in your hand come May? Or is that when you're thinking you were going to sign contracts and have money for an earnest deposit? And that clarifying question is huge for you, right? If they say, oh yeah, Elizabeth, we were really thinking that we would have keys in hand in May, then that's where you're able to get out a piece of paper. You're able to start talking them backwards and working backwards into that time. Because if they want their keys in their hand in May, okay, tell me more about that. Oh, our lease is up end of May, so we really need to be moved by end of May. That's an important time. When we talk about the timeline now, we all know, so when we go under contract, this is like the thinnest little marker ever. It's not going to work, is it? So let's say that we go under contract on March 1st of 2022. Typically, if we're using a loan, we're going to have at least a 30-day close, right? Maybe more, but we'll go with 30 days. So that's putting us at not closing until at the earliest April 1st, 2022. When you're in an appointment, buyer appointment or listing appointment, I highly encourage you, whether it's on your phone or if it's a paper calendar that you have, but have a paper calendar for you so you can help really use real dates, right? So we're looking at, if we go under contract March 1st, which happens to be a Tuesday, we're in good shape because then April 1st is a Friday. And a lot of times you want that closing date to be a Thursday or a Friday, not like a Thursday or sooner in the week, because if it's a Friday and it gets pushed, then you're pushing it over a weekend. So ideally, we're going to say, maybe it would be if you do a 30-day close. I don't want us closing, and you're telling this to your client, I don't want us closing on a Friday. So maybe we look at closing like the 5th of April. So April 5th, for 30 days, this is our closing date. And they'll go, okay, great. That's way sooner than we really need it to be. And yet you have the opportunity when you're looking at a real timeline to say, guys, this is if we get lucky. Today is the 14th of February. We have exactly 2 weeks to get under contract before then, and this market's pretty competitive. And I'd like to give us a little bit more of a window. So our ideal time getting under contract would be between March 1st and April 1st, with the idea that we have a 30-day close, which is putting us, and I apologize, I'm not going to apologize because we would all be doing, right? We could also close on May 5th, which is going to be Cinco de Mayo and a Thursday. So this would be kind of our ideals for them to be closing in May, but it's starting to give, like if you're breaking down the timeline for them, it's starting to give them an idea of when they can start searching to be closed and have possession in May. You're giving yourself a little bit of a window of wiggle room here, right? And the fact that they don't find it right away, because for some reason you didn't close, and you're kind of giving these timelines to them. And I'm doing this on purpose, guys, but like if we ended up not finding the right house until, let's call it April 14th, our 30-day close could very well be like May 19th. And that's still giving us like a little bit of wiggle room. But what I want to explain a little bit on, you guys know I'm really good at the timeline and doing stuff on the whiteboard in front of you. But this is giving them an idea. If you want the keys in your hand come May, we actually can start writing contracts in April and you're going to close in May. The other thing, and I know that this might be confusing, is that first mortgage payment is what most people are most concerned about. They don't want to have rent and mortgage payment at the same time. And when you close on a loan, your first mortgage payment skips a month because you pay in arrears. So you're paying all of your interest at closing, and then your next payment is not due until a month later. Does that make sense? So someone closing April 5th, their first mortgage payment is not May 1st, it's actually June 1st. Somebody closing May 5th, their first mortgage payment is not until July 1st. Does that make sense? A lot of times when you start to explain this to people and you explain how hard this part of the piece is, getting under contract, because that's the challenge these days, guys. Getting beat out by $25,000. There's 53 offers in your price range, or we've got where we're only putting down 10% and we can't compete with cash, kind of a thing. And you point out that this is the most difficult part. And if your biggest concern is when your first mortgage payment is, if we close in April, your first mortgage payment isn't until June 1st. And so that oftentimes will help get people where they're a lot more confident to go out and start looking with you, to get to know the market, to have an idea of if there's something that works for them. And this is if it's a 30-day close. Guys, a lot of people right now are open to, a lot of sellers want longer closes sometimes because they need to get out themselves or that kind of a thing. But it really, when you can kind of explain that and draw it out for them, a lot of times they're going to say, okay, yeah, let's go start looking at houses, because you're telling me, Elizabeth, if we write a contract tomorrow, and as long as we get the closing date over the 1st of April, I'm not making a mortgage payment until June 1st. Does that make sense? Any questions? No? If you're using a loan, most lenders are going to want 30 days. Now, Mo, there is where we get down here and they're telling me they need to be out of their place by the end of May. And sometimes in April, if we work with a different lender and your lender will get them through underwriting, they can do a closing that's 21 days or 14 days. Is it a good experience? Is it a chill time for you? No. You've also got your inspections done, your appraisal done in that time. And if you're going to cut it any closer than 30 days, you're ordering that appraisal day one, whether you're through inspections or not, you're moving forward or not, kind of a thing. But that's too, where you're kind of painting a picture and letting them know, if we need something by the end of the May, guys, we need to hit this, just as competitive as the market is, we need to hit the streets like tomorrow and get really aggressive about it. So this is the mortgage. The mortgage, you need at least 30 days. If not longer. Some sellers are going to want, like, ideally they'd like 60 days because they need to go find something, or they've got something that they've got a longer close negotiated on that. And sellers are in control when it comes to that closing date. But when you explain this whole first payment piece, a lot of times it'll motivate them to write something sooner. So I know that that doesn't sound super powerful, but like most people don't understand it works that way. The one thing I would caution you on is if you've got a closing date of the 5th, you're paying your interest in arrears. So with closing on the 5th, you would have, call it, so in April, we're going to have the closing date of the 5th would mean that we have 25 days of prepaid interest. So this is like a minor thing, and it's a minor detail, guys. So if you're, let me know if you're not following, but yes. For the online. Oh, I don't. That's interesting that it's asking for a passcode.
Sorry, I totally.
It's okay. It's not on the other.
No, we have like an ID. But
Okay.
I was trying to come in over the.
Yeah, you're good. Let's figure it out. I think I joined the one that you created. Let's look at this. Okay, 03. Do we write it down for you?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be offended if I write it on this card? Sure, you're very sweet. Okay, 032587. Oh, well, your memory is better than mine. Look at that. I love it. I don't know why I'm putting this in here, guys. We weren't projecting before. Yeah. What do you mean for the timeline? In the sense of like the 30, when you should start looking? I mean, in this market, your point is that you're trying to get them to start sooner rather than later. Because once you get to here is when you're starting to get into danger zone that either they're going to have to renew that lease and you've ran out of time as an agent and you've been out showing them a gazillion houses and they're like, well, we're not going to get something. I guess we're going to renew our lease for 6 months or a year. So I often will encourage them to get out sooner rather than later because either we can write a longer close and cross those thresholds into the next month, or we can, once they see that like my first mortgage payment gives a month, then they calm down.
This is just maybe my
No, you're good.
FHA people go with this timeline. Obviously, I don't have solutions.
Correct. Like it's,
I'm happy.
yes, no, it is definitely like something that would be helpful to have started. And even more so, like, okay, if you have somebody that's going to use an FHA loan and they're looking at doing something in July, that's when you're like, hey, let's talk about the timeline and what this really looks like. And yes, you might double up where there might be a month where you have a mortgage, 1 month where you have mortgage and rent if we get lucky and we score something sooner. But you're going to encourage them to get out there and get up to bat sooner rather than later, because that clock is going to be that much more difficult. Like this is the hardest state right now as an agent to get under contract. And what I was saying here, this is really great writing most of it. If you're closing on the 5th, you've got 25 days of prepaid interest. And why is this important? It is going to increase your closing cost, okay? And it's something to be aware of if you talk to a lender, depending on the price point. But out here in Lenexa, some of the houses have $6,000 worth of taxes for the year. So if you're taking 25 days worth of monthly interest, your closing costs could sway quite a bit. And it's just something to be prepared for. Does that make sense? Anytime you're writing an offer as a listing or as a buyer's agent, if you're closing just over the threshold of the month, note that your closing costs will be a bit higher. Instead of if you're closing the 25th of the month and you only have 5 days of prepaid interest. Does that make sense? Your closing costs are going to be less. So it's just something to be aware of. And if you're getting estimates from lenders to take note of so that you can be sure to communicate that back to your client, especially if cash is tight.
And your point on BHA, is that
FHA.
Is that, I'm thinking BA as well, but FHA, is that just because in order to get a house or you get accepted, if they take order?
If you're a listing, good cash.
Right. Yeah.
Conventional 35%.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Because I'm a lot of people. She's like,
Right.
She had.
But I would say, guys, breaking it down like this on a piece of paper and giving it to your clients or doing it in front of them so where they can start looking at the calendar and going, well, gosh, if we really aren't going to have a mortgage payment until June 1st, maybe we do get out this weekend and start looking at properties. We don't end up waiting until, because in their mind, I want to buy in May. They have no idea about the 30-day close, which might actually be 60-day close, right? And I can't tell you the number of times that people are like, okay, yes, let's get in the car, let's go out and start looking at properties as a buyer's agent, right? And I would honestly encourage you to really get out the phone and encourage your clients to get out their calendars, because sometimes they start looking at stuff and go, well, shoot, maybe we would wait until March because we've got some flexibility and we're gonna go month to month. Ideally, we'd be moving in May. But then they get out the calendar and they're like, well, we have that wedding that what we need to be in town for. And then we've got spring break with the kids and they're starting to look at the calendar and then they're like, well, shoot, if we don't start looking, get out there now, then maybe we're looking in April, which is making it a lot tighter on us. Does that make sense? I mean, part of your job as an agent is to say, go ahead, guys, let's get the calendar out. Let's really look at that. And I know that might seem uncomfortable and a little bit too much like crying, but that's important. Okay, so on the, I wonder if I can be really smart and like just trying to put the next credit for the other half. It's like a Monday. You guys excited for team meeting tomorrow? Who's going on the dividing lines tour? Anybody?
Going on the dividing lines tour.
I wish that I had the ability to do that. Well, and then both on Wednesday.
And you have two trainings tomorrow, right? And those two are different. One's here in the morning and one's in the plaza. They're two different things.
Love it.
Yeah.
You know my schedule is better than I do. Love it. Okay, so let's talk on any questions on the buyer side of timeline of things. Right? Okay, and you're talking about when you're putting the down payment down. We're talking about when you're putting earnings down, but the seller side of things. So when you start to talk to people about getting their house ready to sell, again, a lot of times they want to do it in the spring. So they're thinking we're going to get our house ready come March or April because it's the hottest time of the year. First of all, you need to be thinking ahead for your client. Most of the time when they think that they're going to get their house ready to go on the market in April or May, they don't understand that they are unrealistic about how much work they have to go into getting their house ready. We've talked a little bit about staging and preparing the home for the market. That stuff takes time. Repacking, finishing all those projects and doing all of those things a lot of times is going to take 3 weeks, a month, those kinds of things, right? So it's important with a seller to set those expectations of it. First of all, let's be smart about talking about what your options are. Maybe we're going to get out and try to find the house before the market gets really competitive and it's hard for us to find your new house if we're going to do that first. But B, when it comes to selling the house, you're going to want to look at your prep. Oh, did I do it again? I picked up the wrong one. Darn it. I like that you're giving me a break. Yeah, so we have our like prep time, which is like home improvement projects. Writing is just great, plus staging. And I would say that for some clients, that's going to be where they can tackle it all in 10 days. And sometimes this staging can take where it's anywhere from a week to 3 months, depending on what their lifestyle is. When you're out at your client's property, oh my goodness, when you're out and you're talking to them about staging and those kinds of things, it's okay for you to offer suggestions like, is there anyone that could come watch the kids or maybe take the kids for a couple days so that you guys could really like, knock some of this out if you're wanting to progress and getting them on the market sooner. This is also a time when you want them to get the calendar out because that spring break vacation and that wedding that 3 of the 4 family members are in will make it to where it's like, oh, okay, we're not going to actually be able to work on getting the house ready for these times. So maybe would it be helpful if you could send the kids to grandma and grandpa's, or could you guys maybe bring in a painter that could take care of this painting and such? But a lot of times we've got prep time of 1 to 3 weeks to get it on the market. Once you get on the market, you can then, if you're wanting to talk to them a little bit about photos are going to be, we're taking that 24 to 48 hours before a list date. The other thing is and I like to go into timeline when it comes to selling. Most people think, let's go ahead and put it on the market. And they're very optimistic about how much time it takes to make their house ready. In reality, they're usually very optimistic. And so you want to say, okay, our goal date, that's your appointment. We talked about this, I think, before. At the listing appointment, your job is to get kind of that goal date and sit down and say, let's look at a calendar. And maybe they get the calendar out and they're like, we're going to really aim Elizabeth for the 10th of April. And so we're going to shoot for the 10th of April. in your mind, you need to be prepared for the fact that it may actually be closer to the end of April. Because so many people are super optimistic about what they can accomplish, what they can get done. A lot of times if they're saying, well, gosh, in order to get this done, we're probably going to need to spread it out across 3 months. It's not like, then you need to take that, like, really that April 10th date you set as a goal. If it's 3 months down the road, it's more going to be like maybe mid-May. Because the more there is to do, the easier it is for that timeline to get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. One of the things I highly recommend is that you're taking good note of what that goal date is, so that if your clients come to you and you say, I thought we were listing your home April 10th, and the price I gave you for your home is what it would sell for in April, not what it would sell for in July, because things got pushed and pushed and pushed. And now we're listing your home in late June, early July, when the market kind of cools down. And in your appointment, when you're explaining to them the different times of the year, I would highly, what I would recommend, that yes, the market's going to be hot anywhere from February through June. It's pretty darn hot. Come June, and this is one thing that you're going to tell people, buyer fatigue sets in. And that's when there's buyers that are going to exit the market because they've lost a whole bunch and they're like tired of being losers. They're tired of running out of work every day to try to go make an offer on something and not get it. And so this is really where you want to be very, very careful. And you as an agent are going to try to coach people to be closer into the April, May timeframe if they're trying to shoot, like if you're talking to them now, because whenever July hits, June, July hits, and the buyer fatigue kind of sets in, you might have told them, I think we can definitely, without a doubt, get $275 for your house. And all of the houses up here in February and March are listing and they're getting multiple offers and everybody's like super excited and they're going to work and telling everybody that like my house sold for so much. And yet you put their house on the market for $275 and all of these buyers have exited the market. And not only that, but when you put it on at $275 in June or July, your clients are going to say, but wait a minute, the houses down the street, they went on for $275. They actually sold for $285 or $290. And so I don't care that their house is actually nicer than mine. I don't care that there's been all these buyers that have exited the market. I want to list my house for $285, Elizabeth. And the problem with that, guys, is if you go on at $285 and these buyers have exited the market, you're going to come on as an overpriced. Buyers are going to, the buyers that are left are well educated on the market. They know how much a house should be worth, right? They've been through a gazillion of them. And they're going to go, there's no way this house is worth $285, or I don't want to pay $285, or it's listed for $285 and I'm hanging in here. And yet I don't want to pay $290 or $295 for that house. It's not worth it. And so the rest of the buyers that are still there are going to say, I'm not going to pay $285. And all of a sudden you've got an overpriced listing. No one's wanting to buy. And your clients are looking at you and going, wait a minute. Every one of my coworkers said their house went on the market and had multiple listings or multiple offers. You said we were going to have multiple offers by Sunday. We're really hopeful. What's going on? Horrible, horrible, horrible for your reputation and such, to be able to kind of navigate them away from that time of the year or be aware of it, and to be aware when you're talking to someone, if you're shooting for listing that February, June market, and then they actually end up listing in July, you've got to be able to say, hey guys, you're checking in with them throughout February and June. We really need to get it on. Even if we can get it on, we don't end up power washing the deck. Let's get it on before the end of May. I really, really, really want to get it on early in May. So like, can we bring someone in to help do some of this extra work? Or maybe we cut back a little bit on the staging, but like, that's your responsibility to help communicate to them. I'm really, really anxious about getting into this kind of dead period in which we're going to lose some of our power as a seller. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other? I think there's a driver's marker. Any questions when it comes to the listing of a house and timelines?
So through your experience, the July time period, we could see buyer fatigue. What happens, August, September, October, November? Is there, again, getting closer to holidays, now we're starting to die off again, but is that
Yeah, no, yes. So what I find that happens so June is where, and we're back last year to a traditional market. Like 2020 was not a traditional market. We experienced nothing that we'd ever seen before, where there wasn't like, people were out like May, June, July, August, all of that was like chaos because I don't think people had anything to do and they're like, well, let's go buy a house because we got a better chance of winning. But normally late June, early July is when things buyer fatigue starts to set in. And that's when you're really coaching your people. No, hang in there with me. Other people are going to drop out. We've got a chance here. July is a lot of times too, where a lot of agents get quiet and they go kind of into migration, like where they're like hibernating and they're taking their summer vacations. August is a lot of times where you're going to have a lot of people that are trying to squeeze in one more family vacation for those family homes. They're like, well, that's great, Elizabeth, but my clients are young. They don't have any kids. They don't have spring, they don't have school starting up. Like, why do we care? The reason that you care is because come end of July, all those families that are in that $275,000 house that you want to buy are going, well, we really need to, we're trying to squeeze in one more vacation. The kids start school on the 18th of August. So they're thinking about that vacation and getting back into the school routine. And they're like, we don't want to get our house ready and put it on the market. So that's where too, like your inventory drops off and everybody's kind of focusing on getting back into school and into school routines. So even if your client doesn't have children, it might very well be that you've got to look upstream at the house that they're buying and what's going on in that world. So typically August and September, people are getting back in the swing of that school routine and that fall routine. So those typically could be a little bit quieter months. As an agent, if you're willing to work, it's a great time to get some business because a lot of agents do use that opportunity to breathe, especially if they've had like a killer first and second quarter. October, things start to pick up again. As you get closer to Thanksgiving in November, people do definitely start thinking about the holidays and like, okay, maybe if you can't get them something as a buyer, they're going, well, maybe then we just wait until after the first of the year. That's a really like to watch for as a listing agent. It's really, really important to watch for that dead space. And it's pretty consistent that it shows up every year. And you just want to stay ahead of it. And that's why when you go and you talk to your clients about a list date, really try to get them so much further up in the market. And as far as like, I know you're thinking spring, but let's really look at March. Because if you're targeting March, you might end up actually going on in April just because of their optimism on how much time it takes them to get the stuff done they need to prep their house. And or if you're helping them buy a house, right? If you have to find them a house before they're going to put their house on the market, then really try to push them to where they're really getting out and getting aggressive in February now, so that you've got time to get theirs on and secure something for them and get their house on the market.
All right, I have one more question, and a
You're
good
good.
answer could be that's another class. Because
No, you're good.
we have another class on a variety of contracts. But from a list standpoint, when you're filling out your seller agreement, you're putting in dates, and I only have one listing, so I can't remember. But
Yeah.
it seems like you have to; those dates have to be pretty firm. And then when you go into MLS, you can, I go ahead one listing, so I hope
You're good.
I cover this in contract writing clause. But it does seem like there's some pretty sure. But I mean, if you're talking to someone in January and they don't want to hit the market until March or whatever, can you do your seller's agreement and just put that? You have to be
I'm so glad that you're asking about that. This is a good question. You guys understand the question she's asking? Okay, I'm gonna just erase it. So what she's asking is when you go to list a house and you're putting on your exclusive right to sell. So there's a couple different options of doing this. Great, Randy question, and I'm gonna do my best to answer it. Because I don't know if this was a dry erase marker.
I don't think it is.
Why would they put it up here, people?
It's a Sharpie.
Laundry marking pen, rub-a-dub.
Laundry marking pen.
That looks like a Sharpie. That's not nice. Okay, so you've got a couple different options. What I would warn you about, so let's say today is the 14th of February, right? And you're having your listing appointment. If you were to say, client does not want to list their house, they don't want it to go in the MLS and showings to start until, let's call it March 15th. I hope that that's a weekday or whatever, it doesn't matter, showing start is what they are comfortable with and goes in the MLS. So for this window here, you've got one question. Yes, you can write your exclusive right to sell to start on 15th of March. Most of the time, you're gonna make that to be a 6-month listing, so we're gonna say the 15th of September. Right? The problem being there though, is that right here, if you make your exclusive right to sell, you only have, you go list it and you put it in MLS on the 14th or the 15th of March or the 16th of March, you're all good, right? But if the neighbor knocks on the door and says, oh, wow, I saw you guys had a dumpster, you had a pod out there, are you guys thinking about selling your house? My friend would really love to get into the neighborhood. In this window, if you set up your exclusive right to sell for the 15th of March, they can sell it to anybody and cut you out.
So you should do it for like the 15th of February or whatever, 16th February, and just have your live date be 3/15, and you have that.
But then that's called, so there's 2 different options there. That would mean if you're gonna do pre-MLS, would allow you to say, my list period is the 14th of February through, and like typically you're gonna do it 6 months. I would say that if I was you, I would give yourself a full 6 months of it being on the market. So you might say, okay, my list date is February 14th of 2022. We're not going live and starting showings until the 15th of March. And I want 6 months with it on the market, buddy. You're not gonna cut into my time for me to get it sold. So then I'm gonna still say September 15th, 2022 for my end of my period. Now you have to enter this in MLS as a pre-MLS within 1 business day, right? And then there's no showings and you can't sell it if you are doing it like this. Other option, this is like option number 1. Option number 2, do a private office exclusive. You heard of this? Okay, so it doesn't go in the MLS. You are able to show it. This you can market, okay? So that's the benefit of being pre-MLS. You can put a sign right that says coming soon. You can blow it up all of your social media. You can try to get extra sign calls and extra leads that way. But you cannot show it, you cannot sell it. My God, people, I'm just like tripping all over the place today. You cannot market it publicly if it's a private office exclusive. You can pick up your phone and you can call people and say, hey, got a private office exclusive. If you want in, I'll let you in.
Yeah, but they're not really wanting to show it until 3/15.
Yeah, but sometimes and sometimes not, or they're like, well, I mean, if somebody came in and gave us a good enough price and we didn't actually have to go on the market, we might consider it, kind of a thing. But your private office exclusive is going to be for 2/14/2022 to 3/14/2022. And then this, you're going to do your exclusive, you're going to do a second one for the exclusive right to sell for the actual time they're in the MLS.
And so.
And you might even do where you're signing both of these at the listing table at the same time.
You said second,
What do you mean?
said second.
So this private office one expires. Now you're gonna have another seller.
Exclusive right to sell. So you're gonna have, does that make sense, Sandy? You're gonna have a private office exclusive,
One thought.
one document called a private office exclusive for 2/14 to 3/14.
You change that right now.
Correct. Yes. Yep. So you're gonna do that one from 3/15 to 9/15.
But you do them both at the same time?
Randy recommends, and I would recommend that when you're at that listing table to say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. I want to protect us to where I have the ability if somebody comes in and writes a pretty enough number for us that we can sell it to them. And I gotta keep myself out of realtor jail. And I can't I used to say it all the time, like, I'm not supposed to be like bringing the stager in here and like doing some of the stuff that I'm doing if we're not under agency together. That's how I protected myself so that like some stranger can't come buy it out from underneath me after I paid $100 and some for a stager to come in and make recommendations. But that would be how, but we did it differently before because we had waivers, but it was the same kind of thing where I'm like, okay, guys, we got to play by the rules. And so this is why I'm going to have you sign this one. So we're going to be a private office exclusive, keeping it out of the MLS because we don't want to start showings until the 15th officially in the MLS and break open the floodgates. But no, that keeps me protected and out of realtor jail. And if somebody wants to come by and give us a really pretty number for it, then we could sell it, show it to them and sell it to them.
So that, I'm big on getting.
Yeah,
And this would be a case where the person's kind of private.
okay, so Randy and I do differ on some of this. It's also to protect yourself, Andy, because if you don't sign, if you're doing pre-MLS, I guess like, sure, yes. And sometimes you can sell something for a pretty penny because it's not offered to everybody else. Right? To where sometimes somebody's willing to pay more because they're scared of it going on the market. Or they're private, or their house maybe is not in the best condition and they don't want everybody to come into. Randy often uses it like, I'm an NBA star and I don't want everybody to come in my business. I will tell you, I sold less NBA star houses and more cat feces houses. Same situation, right? They may not have their name broadcast across the TV. They still wanted their privacy. I also had some clients that were like, Elizabeth, we are low risk people. Our anxiety is through the roof. Thinking about a gazillion people walking through our house, thinking about having to deal with a gazillion things, offers and not knowing what's going to happen. If you bring us this number, we are so happy. And we are more than happy to sell it to someone for that number and not worry about the fact that we might be leaving money on the table if we sell it more. If we took it to the MLS and went through the circus. And I think that that's something to consider. You're meeting your clients where they're at. And as long as they completely understand that, yes, you could maybe get them more money if they let you take it to market, it's their decision. And I had multiple clients that were like, Elizabeth, we don't want to deal with the circus. Like, we want to just know that we get to move and we don't have to declutter and do all that staging stuff that you talked about. Nope.
And, okay, so back to the exclusive right, you said, 315, that you would have them sign at the same time. So on 214, I can have a exclusive right to sell contract signed that doesn't have a date until 3.
No, you would sign, the first one you would sign was 214 to 314.
Yeah.
And then the second you'd have would be from 315 to
So that's a
915.
separate contract. So
Yep.
I remember you set signing that on 214.
Because, yep, because you got different dates. This is covering this date period.
So
And these are
if
two
you do
different
this
date periods.
one-
Yeah,
okay.
yep.
Because you have this,
correct.
but if you don't have that one, you can't do it.
You could
You can.
do, or you just do the 315 to 915.
Signing it on 214. but
Yes.
it doesn't affect it 315.
Correct.
Okay,
The only
then
thing,
You're not protected.
you're not protected.
They can
That's all
sell
fine for the
it.
seller.
Yeah.
And guys, it could be your BFF. I'm not gonna lie. BFF's been on before and been like, I am so sorry. Elizabeth, we feel really, really bad. And we'll pay you for that staging. We will. But my coworker at work, they've got a brother and blah, 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 and very stable in the commission. And so we couldn't pass it up. It's too good of an opportunity. And that's where you just want, and it helps you with getting everything signed. But yes, that, does that make
If you're
sense?
under contract, have you ever had that situation where they say that and you're like, oh, sorry, you're under contract, I don't care that you brought that fire.
Right. Be happy to help you through that. Great. Here, send them my way. I'd be did you let them in yourself? Okay, great. Well, let me get in contact with them, make sure that they're okay being unrepresented. And if so, then awesome. But yes, that protects you.
I'm scared to death that we're up to jail, and so that's why I'm like, training that you're doing, but we don't get in a contract class, we wouldn't have a,
Detail.
this kind of conversation. We're going wacky.
Yeah, no, and anytime slow down on that, to say, hey, what is this? But that's how you've been, and if nobody explains this to you, that's the time that you make a phone call and you're like, but they sold it to their coworker at work, and it's not I have a signed exclusive right to sell for this date. It's well, okay, that's great, but you're not, they sold it between here and here. They were free to do what they wanted during that time. You're not protected. The other thing is this has to cover the end of the contract date. So if you guys get cute and you're out there and someone says, I'll give you 30 days to get it sold. Good. You know what? More power to you if you want to sign up for that and you want to ride it for 30 days. But then if you do get it under contract, you would have to extend it so that you're still under representation through their closing date. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if someone gave you 30 days, you really need that contract.
Or you might have to go and adjust it to say, okay, I did sell it, but now I need to have it cover me through closing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing I would say when it comes to listings is your mortgage payment is due the 15th, on or before the 15th. Anyone owns a house, you guys know that. So a lot of times too, when you're negotiating, you can always look at moving that closing. Oh, so let's do the timeline, the same timeline we had on the other side. Is it okay if I erase this, guys? Okay. So then it's really great for her. So if we say, we're gonna list your house, we're the sellers, so we're in charge. We're gonna list your house on, we're gonna be really pushy. We're gonna get them to stage it and get it ready for us. We're gonna list it on the 1st of March. And then I really am confident that we're gonna be able to get, if you want, a 30-day close. So look at closing date of 4/1. And then since they're not making a April mortgage payment, these sellers don't have to pay April's mortgage. Does that make sense? So there's no mortgage payment for April because it'll be paid off on the 1st before the, yep.
That closing date could be any time between the 4th and, like the 14th.
Now, I wouldn't push it. Like, if you're gonna play the game with mortgage payment, like, don't push it to the 14th. Like, Platinum will love you for not doing that. I wouldn't push it past like the 12th and the 13th, and make sure that it's like look at your Friday, like kind of a thing. So give it a couple days to make sure it clears, and if there's ever gonna be like a delay in payment. But a lot of times then we're saying the last mortgage payment is in March. So that helps us too, if I'm having that conversation we talked about last time with the recasting, or with the, we're gonna go make a purchase not contingent on the sale of your home. So this is the old house. Our last mortgage payment is going to be March 1st. If we go today and buy the new house, non-contingent, guys, and we're going to have it, and there's, I mean, like, we'd have to be a miracle to close it before March. So let's call it March 15th, okay? So we're closing March 15th on that house. We're going to skip a month. So we skip a month with our mortgage payment. Does that make sense? So yeah, May 1st. So sellers, if we have our first mortgage payment on the new house May 1st, and our last one on March 1st here, are you comfortable with us going out and looking at houses this weekend? Because I'd really like to get started, just because the price point in the area that you're looking in is pretty competitive. And I want to make sure that we are able to get you like secured and into a place that you want prior to, you know, that things get busy and the summer market kind of cooling off. Does that make sense? And a lot of times that's a big aha. We're like, okay, so we're not making this April, so we got a free, that's moving expenses, that opens up a little bit more of our budget, makes us a little more comfortable. Does that make, like, where you're kind of helping find money for them? The other time I use this piece is when we're negotiating, where, okay, we're not too far apart. What if we have them close it? Whether you're the buyer's agent or the seller's agent, don't forget to keep that kind of in your back pocket. And the buyer's agent, what if we move closing from the 17th of April to the 10th of April? Do you think your sellers would be okay then, with moving forward with what we've got in place, kind of a thing, or does that make, then that helps frees up? I know we're in a different market where things are a little bit faster, but that's another thing to consider. How many have been out on listing appointments or had consultations with clients that have had to talk through a little bit of like what the timeline looks like? What questions do you get? What do you?
Well, I've only had one listing. I wouldn't say this is about listing appointments, but on that one listing, this was definitely they were buying a house, they were selling a house, it wasn't contingent, so they decided they wanted to move into the other house and leave a little bit of furniture to stay.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of conversations about this exact timeline. Yeah.
I think that but like breaking it out and putting like close date, list date, and like trying to spell it, like it helps to like make it visual for like people to understand of like, oh wow, okay, so maybe we should shoot for sooner rather than later, especially when like some of the hesitation is that double mortgage payment.
Oh, no,
And yeah.
So, but I really struggled, again, I only have one listing, but I really struggled with the seller's net proceeds. So
Okay.
again, depending on that close date, then that's when you're paying the prepaid stuff for the new house.
The net proceeds are
For
actually,
the
yep.
house listing. And that would, I mean, you're doing the math, that can be more or less based on the.
It is, but like within a month's time, it's not as big of a deal. Like time of year, bigger deal. And so like when you're looking at like the end of the year closings where they're giving like, where they're paying 10 and then 12 months worth of taxes, they don't get that money at closing. They have to wait 30 days after closing to get it. Or that's a bigger deal to make sure you're putting out to your people. So,
Is it when you buy a house now, it's not cash?
yeah, I think you always have to do the proceeds. Yeah, so like seller estimated proceeds you do for the initial list price and then you do for offer price that you get for compliance. Is the understanding of that. And we'll go over again, net proceeds worksheet. There's a great way to use the 2 columns you have for motivating them to do more of your staging and more of your prep work and such to go over that.
So we
because
want
it's really
that
helpful.
another training, and so we'll go with that now, 'cause that was new.
Yeah.
Is there a lender that she's? The lenders I use, pretty expensive. I don't like thinking that's.
I never did on the buyer side. I never ever on the buyer.
Yeah, I haven't done that. Yeah, I think we're supposed to do it on the list. side
Yeah, on the
too.
list.
And I did call the title company just to make sure this is what I'm putting in. Is this about right?
Yes.
And they can even go to their website.
On their app,
Their website, look at the fees.
And they have one that can calculate it for you, but it's always good to be able to do it on the fly too. They do seller net.
Listen house.
Yeah. Platinum has that in their app. They've got both the list side and the sell side. The buyer side, I never messed with it because I didn't want to give them a number that was different than the lender and then them being confused. But so I know that this doesn't seem like rocket science, guys, but sitting down and like literally drawing out what those closing dates are, a lot of times, and starting with when do you want keys in your hands, you'll get to where people understand like, okay, it takes a while to get under contract. It would even be to your benefit to sometimes I've had agents before pick up the phone and call different listings that are in a show for backup or pending status and say, awesome, I have clients that are getting ready to shop on this price point. How many offers did you receive? Oh, we got 26 offers. Okay, great. Awesome. Move to the next one. How many offers did you get? Okay, you got 17 offers. And then they take that to their buyer consult. To say, guys, we're not 20%, we're not cash, we're not 20% down, but to take some of that data to that appointment to say we need to get in the game sooner rather than later. Just to get them motivated and get them out looking. The other thing I would say with motivating people with timelines is a lot of times I encourage people to say, even if we're not putting an offer in tomorrow, let's go start getting accustomed to the market, what we can get for our money. I can set you up on searches so you can go to open houses, or I'm willing to go show you 2 or 3 houses a week. So you're not running out, showing up houses when they're not quite ready to pull the trigger. If they're getting accustomed to the fact that in this market, it's listed at 250, and yet you're making an offer at 310 to get it to win, or you're making an offer at 300,000 to win. And they start to understand that sooner than when it's actual like go time and they're going to be in trouble, not and homeless kind of a thing.
So we have like a question on this.
Yeah, no, you're welcome to call myself. We've also got a group of coaches that we're like getting lined out where you can call your transactional coach. On the plaza, they've got coaches that they're aligned with, and then here we're continuing to align people with coaches so that you can call on specific of, hey, this is my specific client's need, and kind of like help walk through. That sounds good.
Yes, thank God for that, because it is nerve wracking when you don't know what you don't know in the industry.
Yeah, but I would say most of the time too, don't let that scare you out of the appointment, right? Like practice it and like make sure that you understand the concept. But yeah, a lot of times people are going to understand and say, I'm either 90% sure, let me call and check on this and get back to you. Or, I was looking at that was like that way one other time, and I went and looked at it again, and here I want to clarify. This is what we're looking at for our timeline, or this is what we're looking at for things. And it's a lot of like, you don't know until you get out there and do it. Right? Okay. Any other questions you guys have from this weekend? This is kind of like a interesting because I've like trained stuff, like combined different ways. So like trying to break them out and be like, okay, what we already covered and like to put them together. So thank you again for your patience with me. I'm sorry. It does. No, not today, not for this. Not yet, not today, no. Thank you. Where are you going to work today?
Let's go.